Welcome to How to Garden. Today, I'm not actually going to be talking a whole lot about gardening. I'm going to be talking about something else that's going on here in Florida and quite a few other places. The simple fact of the matter is, it needs to be talked about. Now, I don't get involved in political things, but I do get involved in things dealing with the environment. It kind of makes sense. I'm a gardener. I spend a lot of time outside. So basically, here in Florida, we have watched this place just explode with people. I've watched towns that I used to live in go from 10 or 15,000 people to 130 to 150,000 people in less than a decade. I have watched neighborhood after neighborhood of designer so-called luxury homes go in. Just suburban sprawl. There's no industry except for building the homes. Just one after another. As large as you can put on the property. No cares as to whether or not a hurricane's going to wipe it out. Just to the west of me is the St. Johns River floodplain. There are 18 new neighborhoods, each of them hundreds of homes going in on the floodplain. Now, they did prepare in advance. Of course, they did it through trickery, so that area isn't technically part of the floodplain anymore. And it's not like they rose the land up like some generous amount, which really wouldn't help any. They built one that runs something like 16 miles levee. One levee. With a road on top of it. Basically, the road is the levee. On one side of it is park systems. Hi. On the other side are new luxury designer homes. I've seen this pattern before, and I know how it ends. So if you're moving to Florida, you need to find out where. Don't move into these new luxury homes. They're crap. I worked in construction for 30 years. And these homes are not good homes. They're built one on top of another. Minimum lot line. A lot of these neighborhoods are what they consider zero lot line. I'm talking about how the expansion and the destruction of the ecosystem in here, or here in Florida, is going to be affected. Now, these homes are starting in the low 300,000. That's what they're calling affordable housing. And that's why they managed to actually get the permits and get the land and everything else, is they called it affordable housing, because Florida's in dire need of affordable housing. Most housing in this area, an apartment starts at $2,000 a month and goes up from there. These luxury homes, you're looking at $37,000 to $5,000 a month. If you're lucky enough to get a bank to sign off on it. Otherwise, a lot of them are actually being owned by the bank and being rented out. This is a problem. See, before too long, there's going to be a massive property price crash here in Florida. And the banks are going to end up holding all those notes on all these homes. And nobody's going to be able to step in and take it over for them. They're way overextended. And they're building in places that traditionally we weren't allowed to build. The development that I was just talking about, multiple developments, is going in just to the west of me. is all built on top of actual swampland. I watched them drain it 10 years ago. 10 years ago, they started a wetlands restoration project to the west of us. We voted for the wetlands restoration. They drained, I think it's 17 miles long by something like a mile and a half wide. They drained that area and built a levee. Flooded another area, and that's going to be these new neighborhoods. Now, what's going to happen is we're going to have a hurricane or tropical storm come through. That's one of the major rain events instead of a wind event. And it's going to dump something like 4 feet, 5 feet of rain in a day or two. That entire area is going to flood. All those new homes and all those people that they tricked into moving there, they're going to lose everything. The banks won't be held responsible. The builders will not be held responsible. The county, for allowing them to build there, will not be held responsible. But it's going to destroy lives. And it's more than that. This is happening all over Florida. I've watched areas of mangrove swamp get bulldozed. They truck in a whole bunch of sand, build extreme luxury condos, slap something like Preserve something another on the name, or Coconut Point, or Castle Point, or whatever they come up with to make it seem like it's a good idea. They get wiped out time after time. And over the last 10 years, the expansion has just been monumental. Now, here's the thing. I've worked construction for 30 years, and I'll tell you right now, it's not the locals that are building these places. There is no benefit for the locals that were already here. They bring in out-of-country people, and they bring in out-of-staters to run the out-of-country people and build whatever they want. Locals don't get anything. Local governments do, because they all get bribed by this. All of them. And if you think your local council or your local government is above that, think again, because every one of them is dirty and it's all full of developers. And Florida is probably the worst on that. New Jersey might come pretty close, though. I've spoken to quite a few friends up in the New Jersey area, and they're doing the same thing. I'm talking to friends in Tennessee, they're doing the same thing. Areas that used to be traditionally farms are just being wiped out. Time and time again, it's the same pattern. They go in, they build on lands that should be being used for other things. Forestry, wetlands, water reclamation. They're actually cut out a part of a national forest here in Florida a few years ago. We did just happen to manage to beat them trying to take over several state parks to build fancy hotels and golf courses. Fortunately, that was stopped by the people of Florida, who were outraged, but it was all being done in secret. And somebody basically let other people know, and people were able to get through the public records, because we have a law here in Florida called the Sunshine State Law, which allows all the things that they're doing to have to be public record. Now, that public record, you have to pay for it. So it's a pay-to-play scenario. They don't like you to be able to get to it. And they'll pay, you'll end up paying to be able to get those records. Or some of it you can get online. But it just goes on and on and on like this. So there has to be a point where these people have to be stopped. There's no benefit for the locals. As a matter of fact, as a native Floridian, I am outnumbered 1,800 to 1 for people that are not from here. 1,800 to 1. There's a town that I lived in for a short period of time called St. Cloud, Florida. When I lived there, St. Cloud, Florida had 15,000 people. And you knew a lot of them. You could easily know everybody in that town. You didn't mean you knew them well, but you knew them. St. Cloud, Florida is now 167,000 people, and that happened in less than 10 years. It went from, it's growing slowly, so 15,000 made it up to 20, and then it made it up to 30, and then it went from 30 to 130 in 4 years, and then it slowed down, and now it's picking back up. Now, St. Cloud, Kissimmee, because they've been joined now, is over 300,000 people. Now, Kissimmee used to be smaller than St. Cloud, but it's right up against Disney, so it was actually growing faster. Do you imagine your hometown growing that fast, that quick? I can't even find the people I grew up with out there. They're just gone. Even if they're still there, you can't find them. Now, that used to all be citrus and cows. That's what was there. You had the cattle industry, and that provided a lot of work for the area. And you had temporary work in the citrus industry. And by temporary, I mean seasonal. Then, there were your craftsmen and your normal everyday jobs, but there weren't so many people. Whole areas, I'm talking hundreds of thousands of acres of what used to be cow fields, dairies. There were a few family farms, there were nurseries, agribusiness. You either were in the agribusiness or you lived out there and then you drove into either Orlando or you drove to Disney. A lot of people I knew growing up worked out at Disney, or they worked for the county itself. It's been utterly destroyed. It is absolute solid suburb. It's just suburbs. You hit what used to be the middle of nowhere. I mean, like way out in the middle of nowhere. You just hit solid houses. And they're all basically the same. You're talking 5 or 6 models. They might be painted different. They might be in mirror reverse, but it's the same thing over and over and over and over again. This has got to stop. It really, really has to stop. And it's the same out here on the coast. I moved out here on the coast 20 years ago. A little more than 20 years ago. At that time, Melbourne was about 30,000 people. Melbourne was considered a big town. They called themselves a city. Well, Melbourne has basically incorporated everything north of them, all the way up to Coco, where they run into the Coco Rockledge city up there. They tried to expand south, but there was already a city that was gobbling up things there. So there's a weird crossover in Melbourne and moving into an area called Palm Bay. Palm Bay is actually bigger but less dense. That has massively expanded. You can look at the satellite images over the last 10 years And it goes from, oh, look, there's a forest there, to, oh, look, it's concrete, it's schools, it's Walmart, Publix, strip malls. But there's still almost no industry here. What industry was here was run out. So what we have now is the service industry, construction, and mowing grass. 99% of the people that move into these new houses are from somewhere else. They're coming here because they're told how cheap it is. How cheap it is to live in Florida. Well, I'll tell you now, it's not cheap. It's never been cheap because the pay here has always been crap. And it will always be crap. What you get paid for $30, $40 an hour up in New England, down here's a $10 an hour job. But if you make anything less than $100,000 in a year, you're basically poverty stricken in Florida. Now, with all of that and all of that massive expansion has come pollution. Now, a lot of pollution did come from the farmers because they were tricked into using chemicals that they shouldn't have been. Pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers. But the neighborhoods are worse. A lot worse. One of the big problems that we have here now is our waterways, especially during the summer. Once the temperature in the lagoon makes it to about 80 degrees, we have red tide, we have brown tide, we have green algae blooms, and it all smells horrible. Kills everything for miles. It just kind of floats back and forth out there in the lagoon. 90% of it in this particular area is caused by runoff from the designer communities. Most of these communities are HOA run. You have to have your lawn a certain height. Hi, Dave. You have to have, you can't even have your grass be the wrong color. Imagine that. Imagine being fined a couple $100 because your grass is the wrong color during the dry season. So all these people have to put down amendments because there's no soil, it's just sand. They come in, they build your lot up with sand, build a house on it, throw some grass on it, water it. That's it. So if you want anything to grow, you've either got to build the soil. Most people don't know how to do that. Or you got to add fertilizer. Now, to fight that, our local government has decided you're not allowed to buy fertilizer from May until September from our local stores. And you're not allowed to put it down. I'm going to tell you now, that really doesn't apply. The big box stores and stuff, they got fined pretty heavy. So they don't carry a lot of their fertilizers after May until around September, October. They'll put it back out. But there are other companies that their entire thing is putting down fertilizers and treating what's wrong with your lawn. And they have a solution for everything, as long as you don't mind putting down massive amounts of chemicals. And they roll in and they spray everything. The homeowners associations, they're putting down massive amounts of nitrogen fertilizer at the beginning of rating season, because it's also the growing season for the grass. Most of those chemicals are water solvent chemicals, and it starts to rain and it goes right into the ditch. The ditch then goes to a larger ditch, which then goes to a canal, which then goes to a larger canal. And then it goes in either one of two places. It either goes into the upper St. Johns River, right out into the swamp, which is actually better prepared to handle those chemicals. Or it goes straight out into our lagoon. We don't have shellfish anymore. They done killed them all. No clams, no oysters. They've spent millions upon millions upon millions of dollars to restore the clams and the shellfish to our water system. That's good. They're trying to solve the problem. But let me explain to you exactly how they're solving it. Because it's stupid. And most of these people are stupid. So they go to the local schools because they want to get the kids involved. And that's great. Let the kids know what's going on. And they go there with these little plastic mats and a bucket full of shells. And they have them tie the shells on these little 1 foot by 1 foot mats. Once they have enough of those gathered up, they'll then take a special crew out to the river and anchor these plastic nets. Mats is what they're calling them, but it's a net. To the seafloor, to the lagoon floor. Now the idea is that the oysters will settle on oyster shells better than they will anything else, which is true. Each one of them mats costs us locally in tax money somewhere around $15,000. And that's with the kids doing all the labor. That seems like a scam to me. You can go to our local zoo and they have them set up there, and you can go donate a couple dollars to tie a couple shells to it. And when they get up enough, they'll go out and they'll do the same thing. And they'll put a nice little sign about it being a restoration area. And then the developer comes along and scrapes it all up, dumps sand there, and builds a house. Good job, guys. Good job. Seen it over and over again. I've just watched a millionaire take out a whole bunch of swampland and build a whole bunch of new houses. There was one house there. It was a 15-acre lot. Now it gets 74 homes. And a pool house. And they bulldozed everything. Now, technically speaking, all of those lands are protected. And if I was to go in there and do the same type of thing, it'd cost me millions and millions in fines. They'd make me restore the land, which would cost me millions and millions more, plus all their service fees and inspection fees and everything else. But an out-of-country development company can come in here, pull a few permits that I can't get anywhere near, completely obliterate a piece of land, dump a bunch of sand on it, throw a bunch of homes on it, make billions, and walk away laughing, while everybody else is going, well, I don't understand. How exactly is it that you pulled that off when we can't do that? If we tried to do that, we'd go to jail, be fined into oblivion for the rest of our life. That's corruption. And the corrupt in Florida is getting worse. We have an entity here that controls our fishing, our hunting, our wetlands, parks, recreational areas. It's called the Florida Wildlife Commission, or FWC for short. It's basically our game wardens. Except the people on that board, they're not qualified. They're developers, friends of developers, bankers, people that are connected to the industry, that are clearing the way for their buddies. Vote after vote after the vote. Now, there has been some fighting back. And there's a lot of it going on down in South Florida right now about a magical rock mine that was going to appear inside the Everglades. Now, it's not inside the Everglades Park, but it is inside of the Everglades watershed. They're just gonna go dig a giant hole out there for rock and sand. It's all being run by Big Sugar. Now, there's been a lot of fight back on that, and that hasn't been canceled yet. They've decided to give it a little more study, which is basically their way of saying we're hoping the people that are protesting will go away and we can slip it through somewhere else. So, that's going to happen. But our FWC Commission, our local code enforcement, and our local building inspectors, they're all being paid off. City councils are being paid off. Now, it's important to find those people and remove them. But it needs to go further than that. These people need to be held actually accountable. And I don't mean, oh, they went to jail for 18 months. I mean, all the profits and benefits that they got from their deceit is removed from them. Then they go to jail. And then when they come out of jail, they do actual service to the community. And I'm not talking about the little community service. Let's go to the YMCA and clean up trash for 100 hours. That's not community service. They call it community service. That's not community service. That's just providing money to another corrupt corporation. No, I mean things like they need to be put out there digging ditches. You need to take these soft, rich people that get everything they want, and you stick them out in the field and make them do real work. The work that people like me have had to do their whole life. You make them go out there and you do something that's actually productive. Oh, we got a lot of neighborhoods that flood in southwest Palm Bay. Well, maybe if those people, with an armed guard, of course, so they don't run away because you know they're cowards, or maybe go out there and clean it up by hand themselves before they're allowed to go back into the community, might change it. Oh no, it's not a tinfoil hat thing. So I am a Floridian who is tired of watching my state be destroyed by corrupt assholes. Period. It's just too much at this point. The neighborhood I live in was 16 homes 10 years ago. It's 118 now. Locals can't afford to buy the lots. It's too expensive. Even if you try to buy a lot, a bank comes in and swoops it out from underneath you. And they'll hold on to it just to keep you from doing something with it. Or they'll slap a rental home on it. Most of the new homes that have been going up are rental homes, and the starting rent is $3,800 on the new one that just went in down the road from me. $3,800 a month. For a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Let's make this 3-bedroom, 2-bath as large as possible. In other words, within 7 feet of the property line, and no closer than 14 feet between the two homes. That's fire regulation. 14 feet. So, that's exactly what's going on here. There are incredible amounts of area. I just watched yet another orange grove Go. Taken by a bank. And immediately start building homes on it. Now, this is 1,700 acres. That's going to be a lot of homes. When they can stick one home on 1/5 of an acre, times that by 5, reduce the amount for roads. They're probably going to put in some type of public stuff in there because it'll be an HOA, so it'll have, a meeting house, maybe a pool, it depends on how fancy they want to get. That's going to be a lot of homes. Each one of them homes is either going to be rented or go for $300,000, $400,000, $600,000. The home that was built next to me went for $420,000. That's a massive amount of money for a 3-bedroom, 1-bath on a 1/4 of an acre. Now, I'm on the older grid, which means everything has to be at least a 1/4 of an acre. But they can make it smaller. In a lot of these areas, they do. A lot of these areas, you own a home, but you don't own the actual land underneath it. The HOA does, which will be a corporation. You'll find this out in an area called the Villages here in Florida. You'll buy a $500,000 home. You don't own the land it's sitting on. It's owned by a corporate entity. You own the home, you have to maintain the home. You have to maintain it the way they tell you. What color, where your mailbox is, how many bushes you have, what type of roof you have, what type of car you're allowed to have, how many people you're allowed to have over, etc., etc. You pay them a fee every month. You come through and mow your grass, edge, make sure the roads are good. Basically, they're taxing you like if they were a government entity, but then you still have to turn around and pay the government too. Now, the Villages is another area that has gotten out of hand. It was a relatively small area with a corporate giant that came in and said, hey, I have this great idea. Well, how about I build all these houses, sell the houses, but I keep the land and get to dictate everything as an HOA. And somehow or another, they convinced a few 100,000 people to move there and agree to that. I do not understand why people would give up their right to their own property. And in all honesty, the property was never theirs. It's all owned by the company. It's a company town. And it's making its money off of you being there. Your water. Oh, and the kickbacks to the city council. Wow. That's just immense. So you get a board of governors and a city council. But the board of governors has more sway than a city council. But everybody gets paid off. Fun. They have destroyed this state. Plain and simple. And it will keep being so. Till enough people stand up. The problem with that is Floridians, native Floridians, are so outnumbered that even if we stand up, we're less than 10% of the population in our own state. Think about that. In your own state, the natives are only 10% of the population. Some places a little more, some places a little less. You get into Orlando, it's less. The bigger the city, the less there are of the natives because they fled. They were put out of a job and ended up moving somewhere else. Their homes were taken due to some type of, mystical county thing that happened, or a storm came through and they didn't get the funds and then code enforcement came in and stole it, or the city stole it, or eminent domain, or we're going to expand this road here. We're sorry your house is here or your farm is here. Now, I would really appreciate it if they'd stop doing things like that. If you have any doubts about anything I'm saying, go look into the corruption FWC. Go look into these out-of-state developers like Adams Homes. Chances are Adams Homes is doing something near you. And if you look, follow the money. You go ahead and look. You're going to find out that they're bribing their way through your city council, your codes, your permits. Look at contributions to political campaigns, hidden transactions from offshore accounts to offshore accounts. The fact that our law enforcement is so incompetent that they refuse to do this. Or is it that maybe they're corrupt too? One hopes that they're not. But it's got to stop. And it's got to stop with the people. So pay attention to what's going on. Get into it. It's really as simple as making a phone call when it comes by that, hey, they're going to go destroy that public park over there and put up some condos. You get a few thousand people that call, and the city council realizes they're being watched, they back off. FWC wanting to come in and expand and put in hotels and pickleball courts and golf courses in our state parks, saying they're going to make it more accessible to people by, bulldozing what's already there. They got a lot of emails, and suddenly that whole fiasco disappeared. And now we got a law being written to keep them from doing it. It's things like that that can make the difference. Now, I'm not saying going out and doing anything horrific is necessary, because it's not. These people are cowards, and if they know they're being watched, they'll run and hide, or they'll try to use the system to attack you personally. But as soon as they know other people are watching them do that, and questions start being asked, they'll still run and hide because they're cowards. So FWC, you should know you're being watched by the actual Floridians who are tired of your BS. You're being watched. Your local governments, start watching them. Watch them closely. Occasionally pop into one of their meetings and see who they're picking on. Because if they got somebody in there in code enforcement and they're picking on that person, you might want to talk to that person, because it's most likely not about whatever it is that code enforcement made up. Are most likely trying to bully that person into submission. Go find out what it is and let other people know. You have a good day. It's time for America to start fighting for what America actually is. I'm not talking about on the left. I'm not talking about on the right. They just have you divided while they steal from you.